Well. Good morning, West Ham fans. Let's talk about West Ham Barclaysmen, shall we? Yes, everybody, Russ of the West Ham Network. Hope you're safe and well. Happy Thursday. We are on our way to the weekend, and that can only be one thing. West Ham is back, and the Premier League is back. Oh, I've missed them. It's only been a week, but it seems like it's been forever, isn't it? To be honest, and you've only got about another month, and then there's another international break, and then there's another month, and another international break, and then I think we're okay for a little while. But anyway, probably one of the things that has come out of the international break is this sort of trend that's called Barclaysmen, and I found it fascinating. I loved it. I've really enjoyed listening to people, and I thought I'm going to have a go. I'm going to try putting my Barclaysman West Ham 11 together. Now, what's quite interesting, we did something for the members on Monday for the members podcast, where we went through our own sort of worst transfers 11, which was quite fun. Quite enjoyed that. And there's loads. And what's great about when you start talking about Barclaysmen and looking back is it's not necessarily the best players. I mean, some players that I've picked are good, and to be honest, you could probably have picked another 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different sides. But I just thought it was quite funny just to spend some time looking at some players that, maybe it fell off the radar a little bit. Some of them. I've got the actual definition of what a Barclaysman is. Well, not the actual, but someone put a definition together, and I thought it was quite a good one. The name derives from the long, obviously, running partnership between the Barclays Bank and the Premier League. Between 2001 and 2006, 2016, Barclays was the title sponsor, and the Barclaysmen are players who defined that era. So we're talking about players from 2001 to 2016. So obviously, season we left the London Stadium, Upton Park for the London Stadium. Now, what's really important is we're not talking about the best players per se, and that's the thing. I'm not picking my Hammers 11 or whatever. And even my Hammers 11s are not necessarily the best players, but the players that meant something to you. But these are players who have left an indelible mark on the Premier League and fan culture. They must be distinctive, whether that's celebrated in scoring long-range thunder bastards, have a unique look or style or an iconic celebration. Barclaysman must have achieved something in the Premier League that makes you exclaim at random moments in conversation, remember him. So it's those sort of players who had it in their locker, or did something that was different. And I think actually the reason why this sort of trend has taken on as people gotten back, because I find football a bit boring, in all honesty, in the pure, not in the purest sense, but in terms of looking at just the personality of footballers. And it's something we've spoken about with lots of players. We've obviously had over 100 on the channel. You can check that out as a playlist there. But when you interview the likes of John Moncur or Bishop or Colton or Jimmy Walker, Jimmy Walker's a classic example. We had him on the channel earlier this week talking about his new book. No, it was last week. God, these weeks, international football's bugging my head up. But when they've done that, you get that sense of personality. And I'm not saying we, West Ham, they don't have a personality in terms of players, but you just don't get it. And that's why people like maybe an Antonio sticks out more than a Ollie Watkins. Now, Ollie Watkins is by far a better player, but Antonio, I'm probably going to remember about him in the next 20 years' time. Do you know what I mean? And that's how you define a Barclaysman in my idea. Someone you're going to go, fucking hell, yeah, he was a player, or he had it in his locker, or he was a nutter, or, and there's honourable mentions. I'm going to go through some players and also go through my thought process. But I thought it's something a bit different. we're going to be talking about transfer rumours because they've started already, and we'll talk about obviously the press conference for the game ahead of Fulham on that'll be this afternoon, and we'll talk about PSR and FFP and money. So just take a bit of time away just to sort of reminisce. And every time I do these types of things, you guys love it. And so we're going to do more and more of this type of stuff because we've got a few of these types of lists in the making. So I'm going to start with my goalkeeper between the sticks. Now, looking at the keepers, the first ones that pop into mind, the likes of Shaka Hislop, David James, um, Anton Steshadushiaskalainen, Adrian could be a great shout actually, and maybe could have got in. But I think there's only one man who really epitomised that time, and that was Rob Green. Rob Green, God bless him. England number 6. The fact he had England number 6 in his gloves, the great escape as well. I mean, there's a lot of players in here who probably did contribute in that great escape. To be honest, I mean, he played over 241 appearances for West Ham, didn't score any goals. And obviously, there was a time in the Championship, but there was obviously the majority of his time with us was in the Premier League. And he joined in 2006 and played continuously in the Premier League, and obviously until we got relegated in 2011. So massive part of the Barclaysmen. And when we talk to ex-players about Greeno, about Wonky Finger, he's an unusual character. He used to sit at the front of the bus and would read his Financial Times where everyone else was in the back playing cards. And that to me is what a Barkley. He's someone he's different. He breaks the mold. So he's between the sticks as my goalkeeper. Let's go. We're playing 4-4-2 because it's easy. Left back, I'm going with Conch, and incidentally, Conch will be at Jimmy Walker's book launch event in a couple of weeks' time. And the reason for Conch is, again, left backs. Obviously, Julian Dix speaks on mine, but Julian Dix left before Barclays took over. Aaron Cresswell could be a good shout. He's probably the longest serving left back probably we've had in almost 10 years now. Will be 10 years. But Conch, it's for that. I know it was Barclays, the FA Cup, but the goal, just the goal. And he's one of those players who's been around the blocks. I mean, he only played a couple of seasons for us. But still played like 60, 70 appearances, something like that. And he's got that goal in the FA Cup. And that FA Cup epitomised probably that Barclays era, in all honesty. So he's between my sticks. Cress could have been a shout, though. Cress could have been a shout. Let's go first centre half. I'd let him shag my wife. Well, I wouldn't actually. But as the song goes, Christian Daly, do. Super Christian Daly. The reason for Christian is, and to be honest, I could have put in Anton Ferdinand. Thinking about that goal against Fulham, that volley. He had it in his locker. But for me, there was something rugged, there was something cult hero-ish about Christian Daly, and I just think, I mean, he played, how many games did he play for us all in? 100 and almost 100, over 190 appearances for us. Yeah, he was in the Championship or Division 1 at the time. But, he was at the beginning of that Premier League. He was there for about 6 or 7 years in total. And I just think he epitomised that time at West Ham. Big fan of Christian. I was. He was a really good, solid, dependable, and a guy that you would probably, trust. Do you know what I mean? He's just like, I loved Christian Daly. And I know technically it's nothing to do with the Barclays, because we was in Division 1, but obviously that when he got the oh god, someone's going to mean that, when he got the mic and gave it that big, Braveheart speech. That Braveheart speech, how he's going to get there, he's going to get to Cardiff and yada yada yada, and yeah, didn't really pan out that well, did it? To be honest, yes. But then I'm just looking at his time at West Ham, and it's pretty impressive. So we went to Crystal Palace, lost the game at Palace in Cardiff, and then he played, and then he didn't play again until the playoff, and he came on as a sub in the playoff semi-finals the second leg against Ipswich Town. So a whole season he got injured, didn't he? Whole season he was out, and he came back for that, and then he was a sub for the Preston North End game, and obviously back into the Premier League. That deserves, literally miss. I know it was in the Championship, but missed the whole of the Championship season to then come back in. Absolutely fantastic man, fantastic man. Christian Daly, you are the love of my life. So let's go for the second centre half. And I could have gone with someone like Winston Reid, Danny Gabardon, but I've gone with Ginge. You've got to go with Ginge. James Collins, absolute legend at the club, modern day cult hero. We bought him from Cardiff in 05. We sold him in 09, but then he came back and he came back in 20. When did he come back? 2012. So he came back and was twice the player. 192 starts, 22 sub appearances, 9 goals, and if ever you see, he was, for me, he epitomised what a Barclaysman is. You'll remember him in 20, 20, 30, 40 years time. You won't remember Kurt Zuma as much, or Naya Figuered. Do you know what I mean? That's to me what a Barclaysman's all about. So he's and what a centre half pairing, him and Christian Daly. Fucking hell. And lastly, on the right hand side, the right back, Lucas Neal. I was thinking Cheryl, but Cheryl would have been before the Barclays period, I believe. And I was racking my brains. Right back is one of those positions we've always had stopgaps. I mean, you could put Antonio in there. He's a modern day Barclaysman, but not quite yet for me. Who else? Carl Jenkinson. I mean, Tompkins played there for a bit, but it was sort of a position which wasn't really addressed really properly. Probably from, Lucas Neal possibly with the last one, maybe. I'm just thinking about other fullbacks. Obviously, Zabaleta came in. Obviously, Carl Jenkinson was he on loan to us? Guy Demel. Guy Demel would be a great shout actually for what's name for a Barclaysman. He was here for 4 or 5 years, 80 odd appearances. John Pansel would have been a good Barclaysman, maybe more so at Fulham, in all honesty. But yeah, Lucas Neal, because he came in part of that, the captain, and we've spoken to Anton Ferdinand, people like that, and how he sort of galvanised the side a bit of an old school captain. Obviously, he came on quite big money from Blackburn as well, and was part of the side, obviously, that the old Great Escape side as well. So he's in, and that is a hard back four. I'm getting moist thinking about it. Right, let's go with midfield. Maybe a controversial choice on the left-hand side. I'm putting Luis Barmorte. Now, again, I refer back to my definition of what a Barclaysman is. They're not necessarily the best player on the pitch. They're not necessarily. I could have, put Joe Cole in. Or I could have put in Payet. Matt, but for me, I could be actually Jarvo would have been a good one, but maybe more of his time at Wolves, maybe. But Luis Barmorte, 5 years, he made over 100 appearances for West Ham, only scored 2 goals in his time at the club. A lot of those were sub appearances, but he was one of those guys who just, occasionally, maybe someone like Nobby Solano would have been a great shout, but he wasn't there for West Ham for long enough. Maybe he would have been a good one for like an overall Premier League 11. Barclaysman, obviously his time at Newcastle, maybe a bit more. But he was there for a good chunk of change at West Ham, and everyone hated him. All the fans didn't like him, but he kept on playing. He played over 100 times for the club. And the fact he's wearing that XL shirt is just brilliant. It was one of the patch era, as I called them. XL Holidays, God bless them. RIP XL Holidays. But he's on the left midfield, the ultimate Barclaysman. If you've got an all-time Barclaysman 11, this man is in it. Kevin Bloody Nolan. whether it's your time, whether it's in terms of Bolton, Newcastle, or West Ham. He is in it. He played a lot of games for us. 150. Well, we got 157 appearances, 31 goals. Yes, granted, 13 of them were in the Championship, but he played for 4 seasons for West Ham in the Premier League and was captain. Had it in his locker. Do you know what I mean? Had that sort of little bit of magic in his locker occasionally. He had the chicken dance. That's the celebration alone. You got to think of those celebrations. That era, everyone had a decent celebration. You had him. You had Tamori Ketspire. Do you remember him? He wasn't necessarily in the Barclays. He was late 90s, wasn't he? Where he'd kick the thing, or Robbie Keane and his arrow, and and everyone had a good celebration. And he had his chicken dance. Not the best celebration, but he's got to be one of the ones in the all-time Barclaysmen 11, that's for sure. Accompanying him in midfield. Now, I could have gone Mark Noble, but I thought Mark Noble was a bit too obvious. You know what I mean? Yes, he pretty much has covered, a good chunk of change in terms of that period. But this man epitomised that sort of mid-2000s time at West Ham. Again, in terms of accolades, I mean, you got that face. I mean, that's quite synonymous, that photo, that image. You got the fact that he got Player of the Year we got relegated, wasn't it, I think, as well? PFA Player of the Year when we got relegated. That in itself is an achievement. And it shows he was a player I loved to watch. He was a player. He had that Parker spin. And he was in a McDonald's advert as well. So, all these things add together give you there's great, there's other ones I was thinking about them today, just now. Valon Barami. For me, he would be a very good Barclaysman, because he was in that period, engine, he had it in his locker, he could crack a goal. I was thinking about Moncur, but Moncur was a little bit early. I think it was like 2001, 2000. I think he left 2001 or 2002. So a bit early on. So this was more like the sort of early 90s, early 20 into the 2010s, basically. And so to me, Scott Parker was one of those players. Could have been Noble, but I thought it was an obvious choice. And sometimes Scott gets overlooked because of Mark, and that's totally fine. But in that period of time, you've got to think, I think Mark really came to his own probably 2015 onwards, whereas in that sort of mid, I think it was 8, 9, 10, something like that, which is prime Barclaysman era. This man was a smash for us and won Hammer of the Year 3 years in a row as well. And on the right, baller, absolute baller in terms of Yoshi Benayoun. I cannot. I love the man, and again, boomerang player. He signed in 06, went to Liverpool to the end of his second year, I think it was. Then he came back, part of the FA Cup run. And then he came back and played half a dozen games 5 years later. I love that. And he was like, and we've interviewed loads of players who played with him. One of the toughest players on the pitch. One of the toughest players. And I hope one day to have I hope to talk to him one day. We are working on it. But yeah, Yoshi, absolute. And I say Yoshi rather than Yossi because I used to sit next to someone at work who was Jewish and his nickname was Yoshi. So Yoshi Benayoun. Absolute baller. And that's the technical side that, you've got people who are cult heroes, but he had it in his locker and he was a tricky bastard. Loved him. So that's my midfield. Up front, let's start. Super Andy Carroll. It's got to be Andy Carroll. I mean, there's not many. You could go. You could go maybe Diafra Sacco potentially. Maybe Craig Bellamy. Maybe Dean Ashton. I think Dean Ashton had more in his lot. It's a balancing act. But for me, Andy Carroll, technically he was at the club for 7 years. 7 years he was at the club. He played 130, 142 games, 34 goals. Rarely, or throughout his time, he never scored more than 10 goals a season. The most he scored for us was 9 goals, which was the 15-16 season, the last season at the Bowling. But then the goal against Crystal Palace. You know, you look at some of his goals. He's someone that gets regularly spoken about being a Barclaysman. And there's loads, and some people put like a sort of a compilation of some of the goals he scored at West Ham. Fucking hell, they were good. They were good. They were good. I could have gone with Marko Arnautovic, maybe. He's a classic, but he was more Barclays for his time at Stoke, I'd suggest. Could have gone Bobby Zamora. Could have done. But I didn't. I went for one man. Not Di Canio. Bit early in the Barclays period. Gone for one man and one man only. Marlon Harewood. Mazza. The man had his own corner at Upton Park. The corner between the South Bank and the Dr. Martins, Alpari, whatever they were calling it that season. That little corner was Marlon Corner. You'd always take them right. That was literally where I was DJing. So we had the police control room. I was next with the scoreboard, and I was looking down on that corner, and you'd always see Marlon run into the corner, do a little trick, and go along the byline without a shadow of a doubt. You've got that goal in the FA Cup semi-final, wasn't it? It looks like you haven't set up. I haven't set up home kit. Yeah, it was the semi-final, wasn't it? Then you've got the FA Cup final. You've got the bit where where the ball came across and he had one leg at the end. But he had it in his locker, didn't he? Could put Colton. I could have put Colton Cole in. I could have put Coley in, and actually probably maybe the better choice than maybe Andy. But top of the head. As I say, could have gone with a Diafra Sacco. Could have gone with Enna Valencia. Could have gone with Guilherme Franco. These types of players, it's those ones who just slightly a cult hero status and had something in their locker, and just that I don't know. It's je ne sais quoi. That's je ne sais quoi. Could have gone with could have gone with someone like Sandro Diamante as well. That type of slightly, something deranged about him, the way of his hair and stuff like that. Could have gone with I'm quite happy with that. I think that's quite a decent side. And when you look at it as a whole, it ain't too bad. But I am sure there are, as I said, hundreds of different teams we could have picked. But this was mine. And the way to think of it, I think, is don't think about it too much. Just the ones off the top of your head. That's usually the right way. As I said, I could have put in a different. I could be Adrian. Adrian would have been a great shout. Left back could have put Cress in, maybe. Centre halves could have put in Winston Reid. You know what I mean? Could have put in Gabs. Could have put in Anton Ferdinand. Right back, probably Lucas Neal. I said you could put Antonio. That'd be the giggle. Yoshi you could put in, on the right hand side. I think that he's perfect for that role. You could have put in, as I said, Noble. You could have put in Benrahma. You could have put in so many players. You could potentially put in Boa Morta. You could have put in Matty Jarvis. I'd have thought Matty Taylor, but maybe for him it was more his Bolton days, to be honest. Harewood, Carroll. You could put Diafra. You could have put Cheku Kayute in the midfield. You could put Alex Song maybe in the midfield, but he was on loan. He was a baller though, wasn't he? Andy Carroll, Harewood. You could put Colton Cole. You could have put Diafra Sacco. There were so many people you could put in, but I'm quite happy with that. Yeah. Anyway, also, don't forget tonight we have the big debate. the big debate. That is on the channel. 9 o'clock with Gatesy. I'll be one of the guests, along with I think it's Fever, Budgie, and Charlie as well, I think. So please join us for that. If you've got any questions, don't forget to drop Gatesy a note now, on Twitter or whatever, West Ham Massive on all the socials. So you can add those questions. Some good questions so far. Some good questions. Some nice questions as well, which is quite nice as well. Some nice questions. And until next time, take care, stay safe, stay warm, stay humble. I'll be back at lunchtime talking about Tim's plan for the future, according to reports. Am I talking about that, or am I going to talk about money? We'll talk about maybe in the next couple of, whether it's lunchtime or Hammer's headlines, whether we talk about across the both. We'll talk about Tim and planning for the future, but also we'll be talking about West Ham, PSR, money, how much money we can spend, that type of thing, all that boring stuff. But it's important to know. Until next time, take care, stay safe, stay warm, stay humble, keep the faith, my friends, and come on, you bloody irons.